Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to be here with Karen Wetzel, the lead of the NIST framework at NIST, and looking forward to a very interesting conversation today. Karen?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Matthew, and I really appreciate this opportunity. As you stated, I'm Karen Wetzel. I work in the NIST program at NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology under the U.S. Department of Commerce. And in that role, I lead efforts around the NIST Workforce Framework for Cybersecurity, or NIST Framework.
One of the goals for today, we wanted to kind of just discuss the current gap in the cybersecurity, the workforce. So CyberSeek just released their latest statistics where it was around 4.9 million cybersecurity positions unfilled around the globe, close to 600,000 here in the U.S. And just kind of wanted to have a chat about what we think are some of the reasons and how we can overcome the challenges in the gap that we've seen here.
That gap is always a big point of conversation, and the reasons why for it are, I think, we're still figuring out. I think it's various reasons why, and there are questions as to, is that number really reflective of what is needed? Do we just need more bodies, or do we actually need to have more skills? Is it higher ability, or is it an amount of people? And that's what I think we're really trying to figure out how to solve. It really is a multi-pronged solution that we need to come and address this. And how do we work with an ecosystem that brings together the employers as well as the professionals, academia, and government in order to help address this issue?
So what do we think are some of the challenges driving the demand itself?
Oh, certainly everything now is digital. And with the amount of digital that we have, that needs to be secured. We need to understand that there are growing and continuous risks when it comes to using our devices, using our systems, protecting our data. And so with that, I think we're seeing some maturing with employers and understanding that being secure is a value add for their customers. It is an important aspect of their business.
And speaking of employers, one of the things that we've seen in the past is one of the challenges is even the gap between the hiring manager and within HR and understanding the skills and jobs that are being hired for and identifying the gap between what gets put out as part of a job description that gets put out on the various platforms or what people are looking for versus what the job roles actually are when the person has to come in and execute on the job that they've been hired for.
It's definitely a changing environment in how hiring happens, as well as understanding that, particularly in cybersecurity, what is needed is constantly shifting. As technology advances, how people are using that technology changes. It is hard to keep track of what is best when I'm looking to hire. And so being able to understand the ultimate mission and goals for the position and for the institution or the organization, as well as understanding what those skills are, what the knowledge is that people need to bring to that is really important. And one of the things that we do with the NIST framework is actually define what the tasks, knowledge, and skills that people need to be doing in their work and or what they need to bring to do that work so that employers and hiring managers and training providers and all of the folks can really lean into and say, these are the skills we need to start building up. And this is what we're going to go ahead and put into position descriptions or assess during the hiring process.
I personally love the fact that the NIST framework is used as a common lexicon for understanding what those tasks and capabilities are.
Task, knowledge, and skills. Yes. We call them TKS statements.
I love how we can use that as a common lexicon between whether it's higher education, whether it's early career development, whether it's hiring, and how we can define put a definition on all of those capabilities. So kind of staying on that same topic around the hiring into the roles, traditional higher education and certification programs, they are creating individuals with some sort of skill or capability, but how come we're not seeing the gap decrease even though we have, all these existing capabilities of creating new talent within the job market?
A lot of times I think it is how to keep up with it, how to keep pace. And sometimes longer programs are not able to do that. Sometimes they are. I think it really comes down to employers and what they're looking for. When we look at some of the figures, that even in website, they're looking for people who already have experience. So we're seeing a little bit of a difficulty sometimes with people leaving and graduating perhaps, and then being able to get into the profession. There's a little bit of a gap there about how do I enter into profession if I don't have that expertise already, if I haven't had those hands-on opportunities to show what I can do in a real workplace. And that's where things like Cyber Ranges can really help, is to be able to make that jump from the education and the training to the actual doing.
So one of the success stories that I've seen in the past for Cyber Ranges is one of our customers, as part of their hiring practice, when they see, for an early career professional, if they see experience on a cyber range or hands-on team-based capture the flag exercises, or any sort of competition with collegiate competitions like your CCDCs, your that's the Cyber Collegiate Defense competition or similar, or they see those as a big bonus, a big plus to go on top of the existing degree or certification that they have. Any thoughts on why that would be the case?
Absolutely. I think that those kinds of opportunities are just so essential, because not only does it show that hands-on capability, it's a real evidence of being able to put those knowledge and skills that one's learned into practice, but it also really highlights the importance of workplace skills, things like communication, teamwork, understanding how you need to maybe move very quickly in certain scenarios, or really be thoughtful about which way you're going to be going. It's those kinds of skills that are equally important to the technical skills.
And on that topic of skills, so ISC Squared recently put out some information about that 90% of organizations report gaps in their in-house cybersecurity teams. How does the emerging technology and the changing landscape impact that, and how can we help close that gap, given how quickly things progress here in this industry?
I wonder if we're ever going to close that gap. I think it's more of how are we going to address that there will always be a gap. There's always going to be emerging technologies, and we are always going to see a shift in what's happening. So how can we better prepare both the individuals who are in careers, professionals, or the employers to actually address that? And I think it is an ongoing continuous learning. It's looking at work-based learning opportunities. It's also about bringing people in through different kinds of opportunities like apprenticeships or internships. But it is, once you're in a position and you're working with your current workforce, it's regularly assessing that workforce too. We have seen some large companies who use the NIST framework as a means to identify who is doing what responsibilities are had across the organization, to have a really clear insight into their cybersecurity workforce across the organization. Being able to use that as a way to make certain that those skills and that knowledge are being kept up, and as new emerging areas are come out, that they are then have the opportunity to learn that and be able to put that into practice as well, is really important. And when it comes to emerging technologies, that's one of the things that we're looking at NIST, and of course NIST and the U.S. government as a whole, is understanding how those technologies will impact this cybersecurity workforce. For instance, we have been looking at the advent of AI and understanding how that's going to adjust or impact the existing work roles that we have represented in the NIST framework. The NIST framework includes, I mentioned that we have task, knowledge, and skill statements. They're our foundation. Those roll up into work roles as well as competency areas. And as we see new technologies coming forward, as we see quantum coming out, for instance, we're going to understand that an incident responder is going to need to do things slightly differently. And so we're looking at how to incorporate that by updating our roles as these new technologies emerge.
And you bring up a really good point on the roles and the ability to update them, where we see those as good foundations for job roles within public and private sector positions, where a lot of our customers, they start with the nice job roles, and identify how those need to be expanded or modified within their own organization. And I love how flexible the framework is, where you start with the role and then you can adjust whether you have a 3-tiered SOC team or a 2-tiered SOC team, or, you're outsourcing your 1 and 2 and you have your own sort of security organization. And I love how you can modify it to fit within that. And we see a lot of success in being able to take those TKS IDs and map them into various education programs or course development within our platform, so that we can continue to add those skills, that experience, that knowledge within that's all based upon the framework, and helps our customers map those capabilities.
Well, and that's what we like to hear. The framework is a framework. It is not going to be the answer to everything. And we work with public and private. We work across sectors and industries, and in different sizes of organizations, from very small to very large. And so it needs to be flexible, and it is not meant to be something that is put into practice as is, no changes, and that covers everything. It's a starting point, and it helps to provide some insights into the common work roles in cybersecurity, whether they may be in governance space, if it's in implementation, in development, or if it's actual protection and defense kinds of areas.
And we've seen a lot of customers be able to demonstrate those extended capabilities through team-based exercises. They keep up the pace. It's not a one and done type of education. It's not just, hey, I've got this certification, so now I'm set for this job for life, where it's a continuous upkeep with their practice in certain areas within cybersecurity, whether it's team-based, whether they're individual exercises, and being able to go out and go against changing threats. As there's a new APT for a new industry or a sector, they're getting an opportunity to go up against them within a safe environment. I love the idea that we can continually update those sorts of exercises and keep up to date and align it all to the framework, so that there's always that common foundation, that common understanding. Right. And we can continually refer back to it to understand where an individual or a team is at any given moment.
And then that's really what the role of the framework is. The NIST framework is intended to be that common language to help make people understand what the work is. We're not going to be at the detail level that you might see when you have someone doing these exercises on the range, but it is going to be, generally speaking, how do you do this work? What is the work intended to be? And that more broad language helps when it comes to identifying whether it's academic programs or careers, even understanding the kind of work that happens in these roles, and being able to then actually put it into practice, have those moments to see if they can, what skills might still be needed, what areas of work they hadn't necessarily considered, as well as it helps with then evidencing to employers and saying, look, I have now had this experience. It relates to this work role that you have now included in your position description. We can now share that language and say, look, I have done this work that you're advertising for, and it's a clear connection. It can also help with career pathways too, and able to understand, oh, I have these skills, and look, this other work role also requires those skills to do slightly different kinds of tasks. I bet I can go ahead and transfer those skills over there and see if that's an area of work that maybe I want to focus in on.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we often see within our customers is the ability to move job roles within the company, whether they're looking for someone within their current cybersecurity team and they're looking for promotions, where you can set that path and you can understand where they're at now. So an example would be where we compare side by side two different job roles that have been established within the organization or within the NIST framework, and we can bring up on one side their current capabilities from their learning path and their assessments, and then on the other side they can say, okay, I want to go from a SOC analyst to incident responder, and you can put those side by side and say, okay, you're 80% of the way there. And here are the areas that you need to get some experience, and we can quickly build that learning and experience path. I love that capability. We also see a very similar type of situation where they're coming in from a non-cybersecurity field where they're either an IT or not even within an IT. We've seen school teachers come in. We've seen people from various organizations who identify cybersecurity as something that they want to get into. And the framework helps identify those capabilities because there's so many TKS components that are not specifically about cybersecurity themselves.
The domain expertise is so valuable that we are seeing a lot of times employers looking at their current staff and doing upskilling to make sure to bring them into cybersecurity and providing pathways, just as you've described, looking at what a certain work role is responsible for, what kinds of knowledge and skills they may need, and understanding that someone in a different area may have that knowledge because they're already in the organization. So they have that organizational knowledge that they can bring to bear to some of this. They've maybe already worked with a cross-functional team, so they have some understanding perhaps as to what the goals are for a cybersecurity work role. And it's really getting that those skills in place. And that's something that, being able to identify what they are, being able to train on those and upskill gives pathways across an organization from all sorts of different areas.
I like that. So kind of on the, that train of thought, some successes from both of our sides. I don't know if you would like me to go first or you go first for a success story. So one of my favorite is we have a customer that is a managed service provider. They have a large group of talent with various skills. They have to assign to different customers for various cybersecurity needs, whether it's through consulting or direct monitored services. But each customer has their own unique needs and requirements. And where we've been able to implement the NIST framework is to help them identify the different personnel that have those different skills and experience so that they can quickly look and they can bring in the requirements from their customer. They can match those to the various TKS IDs and say, okay, here are the people that I know have these current skills and are ready to go, or even identify some skills or knowledge or experience that they don't have in-house and quickly upskill and quickly get that experience so that and they can prove this to their customers. It's like, hey, we have these assessment, we have these skills, and we can show it to you before we even start on that journey.
Having an understanding of what your workforce is so vital to being able to quickly move when there are opportunities or if there are threats and being able to respond to those and make certain that you are protected. And so having your jobs tagged with NIST framework work roles when someone is responsible for one or more work roles, for instance, lets the organization have that visibility into their workforce and be able to quickly bring together those teams to either take advantage of those opportunities or address those risks. Without that insight, and it becomes a question as to how much of a priority is this in the organization, and that brings a big amount of risk to the organization, both in those missed opportunities, which of course are huge. Being able to take advantage of technologies and being able to provide services to your customers are really important, and being able to do that in a secure way is, again, it's a value add.
And to go kind of one pass, I'm gonna move on to our next statistic here, but 30% of employers can't find someone with the right skills for a particular job role. I think that's a very interesting statistic. One of the things that I like about the framework, or we like about the framework at Cyberbit, is the ability to assess candidates and new hires, where we can put them through an assessment that are mapped to the different TKS IDs, where we can assess them and say, okay, yes, they do have these skills in these areas that you require, and then you can prove it. Right. There is a little bit of a difference between knowledge and experience, and of course you have to have both. But I this is where the framework really helps, because it's more than just knowledge. It's knowledge, skills, and tasks. So I'll say it in the right order: the tasks, knowledge, and skills for the TKS. But that's one of the advantages our customers see, is the ability to actually assess and really understand their capabilities beyond just a resume and beyond a certification.
It's putting into practice what they have, what their knowledge and skills are, and being able to show that through those defined tasks that are, identified through the framework that are related to specific work roles. It's really important to be able to have that as a connection. And it also, though, with this number of not being able to find the right skills, it's also helping employers understand what those skills are. There are going to be, if you're not certain about what the work is or what needs to happen, the framework can help an employer understand that more and be able to build that out and work with organizations to be able to assess their candidates or do it internally. But it also helps to identify which of the areas may be a priority for the organization. You were talking before about how the framework can be used very flexibly, that not every employer is going to need every bit of it, and sometimes there'll be new things that need to be added. Using it in that way helps them understand, and in looking at what we have, to what is really important for us and how do we prioritize that in the hiring process, so that we make sure that we're bringing someone in that maybe has 80% of the skills we need, and yet we know that we can really quickly upskill and the remaining 20%, either internally through some type of mentoring or internal training, or through other type of providers.
I really love that last comment, because we see that as well. Our customers often will understand that you can't have 100% of all the skills 100% of the time, and that they are willing to onboard professionals with an understanding that they have, a certain percentage of those skills, and says, okay, well, we can teach the rest. Right. We can provide, whether it's through an online platform or team-based exercises, or even just through a mentoring program with experienced professionals in the cybersecurity industry. But we do often see success there, and especially if they're willing to bring people in and help them grow as well. And we see most of our organizations have that same attitude.
And NICE is more than just the NICE framework. And although with my title, it's hard for me to say that sometimes. I love what I do so much, but we do a lot with our community too. And one of the things that recently in the past year or so that we've published with our community is a guide for employers on creating position descriptions. And that goes through a lot of those kinds of details about what is it that you're looking for, how to avoid the purple unicorn problem, and really using the NICE framework to help, so that there you can go ahead and maybe be more successful. We've seen some statistics that have shown that using the NICE framework in this process can help with hiring.
Yeah. And then, as previously, as I was talking about some success stories, and I jumped in, and hopefully I didn't take away from your thunder, but if there was one in particular that you had in mind, anywhere within the NICE framework, because I was out at the NICE conference out in Denver, and I heard so many success stories from various organizations. I didn't know if anything in particular jumped out that you wanted to talk about.
The NICE framework is used so very broadly. It's everything from career awareness in K-12 to competitions like you were talking about, or it could be used in higher education, 2-year institutions, 4-year, as well as ongoing training and learning. And of course, with cyber ranges and other kinds of providers and intermediaries as well. In addition to, of course, employers, both, again, public and private. And so there are so very many ways that it can be used for, again, this ecosystem to come together to be able to essentially make sure that we have a skilled and capable cybersecurity workforce in the United States. Some of the things that I have seen are including in cyber clinics, where institutions have students going and working with local businesses to help assess their risk using NICE framework, task, knowledge, and skills, and work roles. We've seen it when it, and that's really helpful in terms of making sure they've got those hands-on skills that they can then evidence and help with making sure that they are hired. We are also seeing seeing it where we have people who are shifting into the profession from non-cybersecurity positions and using the NIST framework to help with them with that, whether it's looking at roles that they're interested in already and identifying their current capabilities and then being able to upskill to that, or using it as just a learning mechanism to understand, oh, this is something I'm interested in. I'm going to go ahead and reach out to someone who has this same work role. And I know that it's the same now because it's the same NIST framework language, and be able to talk to them about it and learn more about it. And it's also, we've seen some great successes with companies who are using it to manage their workforce, whether it's in the hiring process or in that ongoing learning, and to identify where there are going to be gaps, both that they have and sometimes that we have, and then we work with them to be able to address those in the NIST framework as well. It takes everybody together working to make this happen.
Yes, it does. So what about, getting people in earlier in their career? Because we've talked about higher education, we've talked about early career professionals. How do we get people involved before higher education?
It's a huge thing. We have a lot of work that we do with the K-12 community at NICE, including an annual conference specific for K-12 educators. And it can be done on so many different levels, everything from introducing people to what cybersecurity work is, what are careers in this space. And that needs to not only happen for the students, but also for the counselors, the teachers in those environments, the parents who may not be aware of the kind of work that can happen and how that might be something that they can support. We're seeing it through things like fun competitions. At an early age, it might be very simple kinds of things. And as we get more advanced, that's where we help to support the U.S. Cyber Games. And that's done on a national level where they actually then go and compete internationally too. It's a lot of fun, those kinds of esports that you see. And it's also going to be those kinds of actual coursework. We're seeing it being developed in curriculum specific for K-12 environment at different levels so that people can build up those skills earlier on, but oftentimes also receive academic credit that can then be put forward to additional degrees in 2 or 4 year institutions, or actually help them to achieve different certifications.
So prior to this engagement, we did reach out to the public for questions that we could answer today. So I would like to put some of these together and propose and ask those to Karen while we're here.
Great.
And so I'll just get started. Let me bring up my list of questions. We'll just start with, what advice would you give to someone just entering the field and trying to align their skills with the NICE work roles?
Well, it's not just about skills. I think it is about that networking too. This is a great community, and being able to reach out, whether it's through the NICE community groups that we have, conferences, or other kinds of ways to understand what the work really looks like. And so being able to use the NICE framework then to look at the specific work roles that someone might be interested in, to learn more about what that job is. And there are a lot of different tools and resources out there, including on the NICE Framework Resource Center, that then show about what those jobs kind of look like in the actual, in the world. And so there are interviews with people about what that work is. There are online different opportunities to play games and sort of live a day in the life in one of the work roles. There are, of course, the statements themselves that help you identify what are the knowledge and skills, and more importantly, what are the tasks that those knowledge and skills will be needed to actually complete. So it really is, there's so many different ways to do it, but it's jumping in and knowing that these resources exist and being able to take advantage of them. And it's always being part of that community, I think, is important.
Fantastic. That's great. So next question is how can the NICE framework help professionals transition between different areas within cybersecurity, such as from technical to managerial roles? And I know we had touched upon this a little bit earlier.
We have. And one of the things that we're looking at doing at NICE with the framework is actually adding in different levels of responsibility so that people can understand if I'm at an earlier level in this work role versus maybe at a member of the team versus leading the team versus managing the team, for instance, how that work role might shift shift over time. And so that's something where, again, understanding and looking at the role and thinking about it from your current actual, making sure that your position and description is kept up to date. What are your responsibilities? What are you actually doing now? And keeping an eye on, well, what is it that I might be doing more if I'm in more of a managerial position? Where do I need to build? What is it that, where can maybe this lead me in terms of a pathway? If I've sort of met the top of where my role is now, where I might go. And so using things like we have at the Department of Homeland Security in their the CISA program, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, they have a NICS tool that's a career pathways tool, for example, where you can go and click on any of the NICE framework work roles that are represented there, and you could see how they relate to other different work roles and where typically there might be entry points and exit points to help you with that decision.
Awesome. So next question would be, what roles does the NICE framework play in helping employers design career progression paths within their organization? So I'm gonna pose that question to you, and then I'm gonna have a follow-up, because that's something a big part of what our customers are asking for at Cyberbit.
Well, and it's really is sort of what I just described there. It's looking at the different roles and understanding where they play a part in your organization. It's simply, a lot of it is about managing your workforce, and not just sort of bringing someone in and hoping they can advance or figure things out themselves. And so using the NICE framework as a means to do that, to give you visibility into what skills currently are had, as well as where you may need to build them out. And as you're looking at strategic planning, for example, understanding where you're going to be going and how that's going to be either requiring new hires or upskilling of existing hires. I think one of the things that we've seen when we've had conversations about what really works well with career pathways is providing opportunities. We know one company, for instance, has a board where someone can volunteer and say, hey, I see that you're working on about to launch this new project, a new team here. Can I join that team? I don't have the expertise. I want to learn more about it. And they've given those opportunities, and they've brought people into cybersecurity as a result. It's looking at the different ways that you can be more flexible with your work, with your staff, to be able to give them those opportunities on a regular basis.
We're seeing a lot of the same thing, with kind of one special caveat. A lot of the times when we first go into customers, they might not have heard of the NICE framework. Right. We have run into that before, not always. And it's almost like the light bulb goes off in their head, and they like, oh my goodness, this exists. This lexicon does exist. Cyberbit, help me understand where we're at today. Like, what are we have these job roles, but we haven't necessarily mapped them, or they've not even had an idea other than, this is our kind of our daily operations, and we're going to build a job role around that, where we've been able to fully transform their job roles, their career path, their onboarding, put metrics to them, properly identify what those job roles are, properly identify the skills that are needed, and how to either find the skills that are already there, or help them develop those skills, or go find the new skills that they need. So we've seen a lot of growth within the organization themselves by implementing the framework. And we, that's one of my favorite parts of my jobs, is to help our customers be able to do that.
Right. It takes it from a sort of organic part of your organization to really providing some structure and some intentionality when it comes to how you're going to put this workforce into place, how you're going to make sure that you're not going to lose staff, because you don't have pathways for them. How do you make sure that you can mature the workforce that you have? And it's that intentionality that having a framework and a structure around it can really help.
You had mentioned this before. Are there specific tools or resources developed by NIST or partners that help individuals or organizations use the NICE framework?
There are all sorts of tools out there, as well as a lot of work like what you've been doing with mapping to the NICE framework. And it's understanding, when you go in and you look at a service provider and say, hey, are you using the NIST framework? It's really that common language. So I think coming to the NIST Framework Resource Center is a great way to get started, find out what resources are already available, and then also, working with our NIST Framework users group and our communities to say, hey, we need to build something out more as well. So there are resources like the one I mentioned about developing out position descriptions. There are resources like our success stories and our framework and focus interviews that provide insights into how other organizations have implemented the framework or how individuals have used it to help advance their careers. And then there are going to be tools like what we have with our colleagues over at DHS with the Career Pathways tool. We are supporters of CyberSeek, and they tie into the NIST framework as well. And then a lot of other kinds of ones that are done outside of what we do that help. So it's almost like the first time you see a new car on the street and then suddenly you see them everywhere. I'm hoping that's what the NIST framework's like. It's the first time you've heard it, maybe. Now you're going to start seeing it everywhere. But it's getting that language and making sure that it becomes part of the common language when we're talking about the cybersecurity workforce.
So what trends or shifts have you seen in the demand for particular work roles or skill sets as reflected in updates to the NIST framework? We
are shifting a lot into not only the new technologies and understanding their impact. We mentioned AI and quantum, that we expect that there will be others as well, and understanding how we can incorporate that into existing work roles. So rather than creating a duplicate or parallel framework that looks at those, we're going to understand how those are affecting existing ones and update our roles as a result. But we're also seeing things like needing to bring in more cybersecurity at earlier stages. So we're working with our colleagues at NIST to develop out new roles in product security, for instance. We're also looking at extending this into the OT space, or operational technology, and understanding how this might work with cyber physical systems and critical infrastructures. As we've seen all sorts of in the news, all sorts of different instances where not having those in place has a real safety impact for our nation. And so those are the kinds of areas that we're extending. Also needing perhaps more specific guidance for particular industries. And so we've been working closely, for instance, with people to understand how this might play out for space, how it might play out for maritime, what it looks like when it comes to health sector. And so translating what we have into language that they're going to be able to understand, or prioritizing specific roles that may be more relevant for those industries. So that's all work that we have ongoing now. But really, when it comes to which ones are prioritized, I think it's just that we're seeing a maturing overall of the cybersecurity profession and what that plays out in an organization. And so it's really that we keep the roles that we are told by the community and by employers are relevant. We make updates as a result of feedback, and we work with the community and subject matter experts to do that. And then, of course, we are looking at how do we extend to areas like data that may be, borderline with cybersecurity, but obviously very relevant.
And I would kind of reflect that same response, where the trend just seems to kind of be all over not all over the place, but we need more of everything.
It's just more.
We need more of everything. And once again, talking about the flexibility of that framework is we can easily build new job roles and quickly pivot and help support those changes within an organization. We do have a number of roles across an organization. We really take the perspective that cybersecurity is interdisciplinary. It's not just the domain of one particular area in an organization, but as we see, so much is digital now. That responsibility is something that needs to happen in many different places. And so the NIST framework work roles represent that. Everything from leadership and governance kinds of roles to project management and program management roles, and understanding their responsibilities. It's really across the board, and that's where it has that flexibility too. And it's across, we need more of everything, and that's not just in one place. So how can we align our certifications with the NIST framework?
We are doing a lot of work with the community around mapping and alignment. That's, I think, as we're seeing, again, more maturing of the space, there have been a lot of different approaches to this. And what we are hearing from the community is an interest in making it easier for them. And so things like mapping and alignment is one way to do that, as taking on the language of the framework and being able to do that. And so we have on our site mappings to the framework. We are actively engaging with the community to support that. For instance, we'll see with the C3 certification bodies, they've all mapped their certifications to the NIST framework and made that available, and we link to that. It's an area that we want to continue to build and to make sure that there is more consistency and make it easier for everyone who is working in this space. We're actually developing now guidance for folks who are maybe struggling a little bit with that, some best practices. We've heard from folks like you about what worked for you and be able to share that out to others who maybe haven't taken that path yet. We've worked with curriculum providers and developers as well who map or align to the framework, and so getting some of that insight as well. So we are looking at how do we provide more resources, basically to help those who maybe haven't quite got as far along as you all have. We work very closely with the international community, and I know that there are other cybersecurity frameworks that are out there, and we work very closely with them to make certain that we are aligning with each other and that we can map to each other as well. So really it is everybody sort of coming in together to, again, make this a community effort and have this be an ecosystem that works well.
What future developments can we expect in the NIST framework to better support lifelong learning and career advancement in cybersecurity?
So the NIST framework was first published at NIST in 2017. And in 2020, right after I came on, we actually released the first update of our special publication. It was at that time we streamlined the approach to the framework and to make it easier to adapt and to use, as well as to update. And by removing our, what we call the NIST framework components, which are our work role categories, our competency areas, as well as the task, knowledge, and skill statements, separate to the PDF of that document, we now are able to make updates more regularly. We went through a process of basically reviewing all of our content, updating it to match that new 2020 approach. And that came out with our first version of the NIST framework components, version 1, and that was released in March of 2024. We have now released a second version in this year that was in March of 2025, and we have out right now for comment new areas and new work that we are doing. So at this point, we're looking at having much more regular updates, ones that hopefully are not going to be difficult for the community, the ones that actually will be improving things. So updating existing work roles to address emerging technologies, adding in work roles in gap areas like risk management that, we're working with existing NIST publications and standards and other kinds of information that is out there to reflect what is already known, but to do so from a workplace perspective. And so it's an ongoing development. We work with the community very closely to help identify what the priorities are, as well as to engage with subject matter experts and practitioners in its development. And so we welcome that kind of feedback as well to make certain that what we have is useful and relevant.
So for our viewers, what would you have them follow up on as an action item following up this conversation we're having?
Well, if you're new to the NIST framework, visit our NIST Framework Resource Center, and you can take a look at some of our FAQs, our quick guides to the NIST framework, and start to look at some of the actual materials. We make it available in different formats, including an online browsable, searchable format, so it makes it easier for people to start to get to understand what the framework itself is. And once you're there, you'll actually be able to visit, the rest of the NIST website, where we have resources for all different types of audiences, our various communities and communities of interest in specific areas of interest like apprenticeship or K-12. You can also go ahead and reach out and see from there how it ties into actual examples of people using the framework. So it's a great place as a point to get started. And if you're not new to the framework, it also gives you a place to then connect with us or to get additional resources to implement it or to reach out and tell us, things that may be missing.
Yeah, and how could individuals and organizations help guide the framework? Is there a
Absolutely.
Are there ways that we can, as a community, can help here.
Absolutely. And we have on our site a list of here are all the different ways to get engaged. Everything from responding to our calls for public comments to helping us as we develop new content or suggest new content. There are a lot of different ways. And, maybe starting out with our NIST Framework users group is a great place to get your feet wet.
And if anybody would like an opportunity to see the NIST framework in action within our platform, please feel free to reach out, and we would love to give you a demo of our platform. And Karen, is there any last words or comments that you would like to make before we end today's conversation?
I just appreciate this conversation. I mean, have the opportunity to speak with the community and really just highlight the importance of these hands-on approaches and making certain that we have a capable workforce. So thank you for your work with the NIST framework and for the opportunity to share about it.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, and appreciate your time and look forward to lots of work together in the future.
Me too. Thanks.
Thank you.